Days passed, but the darkness did not leave. Even in sunlight, I could feel it lingering at the edges of my vision, a heavy, suffocating presence that pressed against my mind. I started noticing things that shouldn't have been there. Shadows that moved independently of the sun, corners that seemed darker than possible, and sometimes faint whispers that I could not trace to any human source. My brother seemed unaffected or perhaps attuned. He moved through the house with an ease that unnerved me, touching objects, speaking casually. But somehow I could feel the shadow respond to him, stirring as he passed, twisting the air in strange, unnatural ways. I stopped looking directly at him, afraid that whatever darkness hovered around him would latch onto me through his gaze. One evening, alone in my room, I heard it again, the low, almost imperceptible whisper of something approaching. I froze, my chest tightening, sweat prickling my skin. The whisper grew louder, layered now with voices I did not recognize, words in a language I could not place, speaking in tones of warning and malice. I tried to call for my dad, but my voice stuck in my throat. It was as though the shadow had pressed a hand over my mouth, suffocating sound itself. My heart raced, pounding so violently I feared it would burst. I could see shapes in the corner of my room, dark, slithering forms that shifted, impossibly fast, almost sentient. I realized with a cold horror that it wasn't just the shadow itself, it was feeding on fear. Growing stronger as I panicked, learning the rhythm of my terror. My brother came by, as he always did, silent and observing. I wanted to tell him, to warn him, but something about him had changed completely. His eyes glimmered with a strange light, like he could see beyond the veil that I was only beginning to glimpse. When I tried to speak, he only smiled faintly and said, "You're seeing it too, aren't you?" His voice was calm, but underneath it, I could hear an edge I'd never noticed before. It was the same edge I had seen in the mist the night I panicked, cold, patient, knowing. I didn't answer, because I realized there was no way to explain it. Not to anyone who hadn't felt it touch the back of their mind, whisper in their thoughts, make them question what was real and what was not. As the days bled into nights, the shadow grew bolder. I began seeing it in reflections, glimpses in mirrors, in the glass of windows, hovering just behind my brother or sometimes beside him, stretching impossibly across the walls. It didn't follow the rules of light and space, slipping and flowing like liquid smoke. And I could feel it reach for me, testing me, as though measuring my mind, finding weaknesses to exploit. I tried to tell myself I was imagining it, that the stress, the weed, the sudden reunion with my brother were all combining to fracture my perception. But the nausea, the trembling, the overwhelming sense of dread, those were too real. One night, I awoke to find the room plunged into unnatural darkness. The air felt heavier, almost viscous, pressing against my skin. The shadow was there, larger than I had ever seen it, filling the corners, stretching across the ceiling, and my brother was standing at the doorway, motionless, watching me. His face was unreadable, calm, but I could feel the darkness thrumming from him, a pulse that resonated with the shadow itself. I tried to scream, but again, no sound came. The shadow seemed to lean closer, a mass of black smoke curling toward me, and I realized then that it was not merely attached to my brother. It had taken residence in him. It was using him as a vessel, a bridge to reach me. The fear twisted in my chest, and I knew that if I did not act, it would consume me, body and mind. I ran. I ran down the hallway, feeling the floorboards bend under my frantic weight, the darkness stretching behind me like a living thing, clawing at the edges of my vision. My brother followed, silent, gliding with a strange, unnatural grace, his eyes locked on mine. It was no longer clear if he was even human, or if the shadow had consumed him entirely, leaving only a husk animated by some malevolent will. I stumbled into the living room, past the furniture that seemed to shift and bend with each frantic movement, and burst through the back door. The backyard was empty, bathed in moonlight. Yet the shadow was everywhere, pooling across the lawn, slithering along the edges, circling, patient. I tried to scream again. And this time my voice broke free, ragged and terrified. But it barely reached the night air before the shadow recoiled, flicking like a living thing. My brother stepped into the moonlight, calm now, almost serene, his eyes gleaming with something I could not name. "It's not real," he said softly, but the words carried a terrible weight, as though the shadow had lent him its own voice. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to run toward the light, but instinct screamed that the light was a trap. The shadow writhed behind him, stretching impossibly toward me, and I knew then that it was a predator, and I was prey. The following days were a blur. I stopped sleeping properly, the shadow appearing in every corner, every reflective surface, whispering, testing, taunting. I avoided my brother, though I could still sense him watching, always present, always tethered to that darkness. I began noticing subtle changes in my self-thoughts that were not my own, impulses to act in ways I would never normally consider, flashes of anger, fear, or strange compulsion. The shadow was not just outside me anymore. It was seeping into my mind, threading into my thoughts, making me question what was mine and what belonged to it. By the sixth night, I realized that confronting it directly was the only option. I went into the basement, where the darkness was thickest, where the smell of damp wood and old memories seemed to mingle with the unnatural cold that radiated from it. My brother was there, sitting in the corner, calm, silent, and when he looked at me, I could see the shadow curling around him like smoke from a fire. I spoke to him, words shaking, pleading, "You have to fight it. You have to stop it." He smiled faintly, the calm, terrifying smile of someone who had seen the truth and accepted it. "I don't need to fight it," he said. "It is part of me. Always has been." I felt the blood drain from my face. The shadow pulsed, rising, expanding, and I realized that whatever it was older than any of us, older than the house, older than the blood that ran through my brother's veins.